Fabulous. Okay, great. This is also my first trial run in a long time on screen sharing, so let me know if you cannot see my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Perfect. So, how to do a lit review. So it's going to be definitely more specific to the topic that you're doing. So my presentation is geared more towards tips and tricks to organization, because organization is, in my opinion, the most important part of doing a literature review. So before you even begin searching, it's essential to have a concrete goal for your literature search. So there's many reasons why you might be doing a literature search. Like maybe you're already crafting, maybe this is a literature search that before you even start your project, right? In that case, you're probably wanting to know like what's already been done and what hasn't been done in order to kind of to gear your own project in terms of what you want to look at and how you want to look at it. But you could also be doing a literature search if you're already at the stage of like writing a paper and you're looking for information to cite, more for citations of literature for describing the intro and discussion for your paper. So in doing that, it's essential to have a goal for your literature search so that you don't get lost among all the amazing papers that you're bound to find. It's also important to choose keywords. So keywords meaning the words that you're going to be using when using Google Scholar, because Google Scholar is going to be your friend. Like by the end of your literature search, Google Scholar, you're going to know it like amazingly, hopefully. So the example that I'm going to stick to is based off of a project that I've been doing. So in my case, I was interested in first year students, loneliness, and friend and parent relationship quality. So my keywords when doing the literature search and using on Google Scholar would be loneliness, first year college students, and friend relationship quality. So in something to keep in mind before you begin your search is that it's good to read the classic papers. So what I'm talking about is like in the late 1990s, well, like 1960s, 1970s, there was like a very big boom in psychology where a lot of really amazing people were doing amazing research. So those are going to be the classic papers, the papers that are going to be useful for you to read, for you to know what the foundations of the area that you're looking at. So those papers are great, but you also are going to want to focus more on recent papers, because although it's great that someone had a brilliant research idea back in 1970, that's not going to be very helpful because you're missing out on what's been happening recently. So I'll definitely go into later how to go about that when you're actually starting. It's okay to have no prior knowledge of the area that you're doing a literature search on, because the whole point of a literature search is to learn what's out there. So I remember when I started my first literature search, I felt kind of lost because I had absolutely no knowledge of the area. Like I didn't know anything about the literature on loneliness. So I just kind of felt like, oh, you know, maybe I'm not equipped to be doing a literature search. But the whole point of a literature search is for you to learn what's out there. So totally don't be afraid if you have absolutely no knowledge about the area, because by the end of your literature search, you will know way more than you thought you would. Okay, so if you get nothing else from this presentation, just remember this. Organization is key. Like really, please stay organized. So my pro tips are to make a spreadsheet. So the spreadsheet is going to have all the important information about every single paper that you download onto your laptop. And when I say every single paper, I mean every paper. And all of these tips that I'm giving you today are things that I didn't do in my literature search that I wish I would have done, because now I have a folder that has 200 papers. Some are labeled correctly, some are not. And sometimes I'll remember that I read a paper that made a specific point that I'm looking for. But because I didn't label it, I have no clue where that paper is. So I've spent countless hours that I really didn't need to, trying to find a paper that I had already read. So all of that said, keep all your papers labeled correctly, have folders, and then set a timeline. So the reason it's important to set a timeline is because it's easy to say, oh, I don't have to read the paper today. I could just read 2 tomorrow. But then a whole week passes and you said you were going to read a paper a day, but now you have 5.
Sorry to cut in. I don't know if the audio is just for me, but Maria, you're going in and out a little bit. Is it just me? Oh, you do? Okay. Okay. Is there anything covering your audio?
Are your hands putting on like anywhere?
No, it might be my internet. Hopefully not.
Okay.
Oh,
It's
no.
not speakers being covered sometimes.
Yeah, it's like someone's like rubbing your microphone. It's like on and then off and then loud and then quiet. I don't know.
Oh, no. Okay. Well, let me know if there's more issues.
Okay.
I swear, my internet decides to cut out today, Walter.
It's all right.
No worries. Yeah, so set a timeline because you want to avoid having to frantically read papers. And also, there's a smart way to read a paper. You do not need to be reading every sentence. Do not be reading every sentence. So this one's also important. So Google Scholar is your friend in this literature search. By the end of it, Google Scholar is going to be your best friend, honestly. So in your first pass of doing your search, it's good to organize your results by relevance. So when you get to Google Scholar, it gives you an option to either sort it by relevance or sort it by date. It's a good idea to do the first search by relevance because that gives you at the very top of the search results the papers that have been cited the most, which is going to be helpful because if a paper has been cited like 300 times, that probably means it's an important paper. So those are helpful to have. But after you found the few like key papers, it's more helpful to sort it by date because that allows you to know what's been recently published. Because even within a topic area, the research may vary. So maybe originally the focus was on like loneliness in first years, but in the past 10 years, maybe that's shifted to loneliness in college in general. So it just gives you a better idea of what's out there. And Google Scholar also gives you an option to further fine tune. So let's say you're just looking for papers since 2016. So the past 4 years, or you can do it a custom range of like 2010 to 2020. Yeah, so then another great tip is to use the references of great papers as a guide to more papers. What I mean by that is once in a while, you're going to find a paper that you just absolutely love and that has a lot of really important information. So a great tip is to go to the reference section of that paper and look through the papers that they reference. And then you could, instead of using Google Scholar, you just look through the references of that particular paper and see what papers catch your mind from there. And then just kind of like following the trail, because usually there's a few PIs that are just kind of like central to an area. So maybe going to their website and seeing the research that they've published, because there's always like key players within an area. Also, another pro tip, use Sci-Hub, like essential if you can't find the PDF through Google Scholar. Or if you're a UCLA student or affiliate, then I know if you use the UCLA Wi-Fi or if you're connecting through UCLA through a VPN or something, it also grants access to a lot of the PDFs, but UCLA is kind of in a weird legal battle with the main publisher, so they've like not allowed publication access to a lot of PDFs. So honestly, Sci-Hub, or if you can't find it on Google Scholar, but Google Scholar is usually pretty good about finding, if nothing else, at least the preprint for the paper. Great. So now making the magical spreadsheet. So this isn't necessarily like you have to make the spreadsheet like this, but these are the things that I found to be essential in knowing about each paper. So first author, the first author's last name and first initial, that's going to help you later on for citations and also for an easy way to know who to cite and who the paper was about. The year it was published, again, so you know, was this a paper that was relevant 20 years ago, but probably not so relevant now? the journal it was published in, because also it'll help you when you're making your citations, the title of the paper, obviously for essential reasons, you want to know what the paper was. But the most important part of the spreadsheet is going to be your summary of findings. So this you can tailor to however you want. I like to make one column that's just like verbatim, well, not verbatim, but like a summary of the findings. But then I also make another column that's comments. So what were the findings and why do I care about this paper? Like, why do I care about the findings of this paper? And then a link to the paper, or if you already have the paper, it could be a link to the actual PDF or the DOI, which is the link that takes you directly to the paper. So in annotating papers, again, that's totally up to you what you want to do or how you want to do it. But try to name all the papers the same way. So like I said, I didn't do that, and it was very hectic to try to come up with papers. So the way I like to name them is to just put the first author's last name and then the year it was published. You can also technically do the whole title of the paper, but then it gets a little long, so I think this is more streamlined. And then at the top of the PDF, I like to make a note with the key points again. So it's going to be similar to what you do in your spreadsheet. And then I also like to color code my papers. So I do like purple, if I remember correctly, was papers that were about loneliness. And then blue papers were the papers that were about relationship quality with parents. But that just kind of helps you fine tune what your papers are about, because after you've read so many papers, they kind of start blending in, and it's hard to remember where exactly you read this information in. Another key thing is every single time you download a paper, rename it right then and there and add it to your spreadsheet. Because all it takes is one late night scrolling through Google Scholar and downloading 30 papers, and then you didn't label them. So then the next morning you look at your downloaded section and you realize that you now have 30 papers that you don't remember why you downloaded. So don't do that. Like, keep everything labeled, keep everything up to date. And then one paper can make different points as a citation. So there, especially for the more older papers, the classics, one paper can make very different points. So let's say the paper is looking at loneliness in first-year students, and they're looking at relationship quality. And their findings were that having good relationships with friends helps students feel like they belong at the university, and also that having high relationship quality with friends lowers loneliness. So those are two different points that I can make from that same paper. So just keep that in mind, that it's okay to be using the same citation to be making kind of different points. Great. So lastly, just things to remember. First and foremost, stay organized. Please, I'm not joking. You don't want to have to deal with the back and forth that I had to deal with. Second is give yourself enough time. It's because it's going to take time to read through all of the papers. So in theory, you could probably do a literature search in 2 weeks, but that's kind of really pushing it. I would give myself more like a month to be able to fully go about it. And also keep in mind your literature review goals. And lastly, that there's always going to be another paper that's out there that it's out there undiscovered, and that's okay. Because another thing I personally felt that personally happened to me was that I would find a paper and it would be a great paper, but in the back of my mind, I would think, what if there's another paper that makes this point and even more points? So then I would keep searching, and there's always going to be more papers out there. So there kind of has to be a point where you stop and decide that this is it and that paper is going to have to do the trick. But yeah, that's about it.
Yay, thank you. I have a question.
Yeah,
Do you
totally.
have any helpful tips? And this is going to be super juvenile, but do you have any helpful tips? You mentioned like don't read every line. So
Yes, I totally forgot.
what do you think is the best way when you're reviewing all of these papers? Like what should I be looking for? Is it just discussion? Is it just abstract and discussion or whatever?
So what I like to do is I do abstract first. The abstracts personally that they usually sometimes not exaggerate the results, but the abstract gives you like a general overview, and then I go straight to the discussion. Because if it's a good paper, it's supposed to explain the results in a way that's easy to understand. So rather than try to decipher it in the results section, I go straight to discussion. Even then, you could just be skimming because there's usually different sections to the discussion. So let's say I'm just interested in one of their 3 findings. I would go just specifically to the section that talks about the finding that I'm looking for. And that really cuts down on time. And then that could be like your first pass. And then once you're actually using the paper for citations, you could go back and read it more thoroughly if you want to.
Okay.
But in terms of when you first are looking for the papers, definitely abstract discussion. The rest can be temporarily ignored.
Cool. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yay! Does anyone else have other questions for Maria or Danielle?
Also, I just want to piggyback. I took a workshop in the beginning of COVID about Zotero. I don't know if anyone's heard of Zotero, but super helpful. And also, Sci-Hub has like a Google Chrome extension, and if you press it and Zotero has a Google Chrome extension, it'll like pull from Sci-Hub into Zotero. So you just click the button. So it's like super easy to save. But that has saved me as well as just because you're right, you like read all these papers and then you forget what all of them are about. And within Zotero, you can like make notes. So it's kind of nice.
Yeah.
I am going to look up like workshops for Zotero and try to, or I mean, not only Zotero, I think where whoever offered it also does the basic programming courses as well. I think it's the IDRE. If not, it's that other like that life science. I forget what it is. But I'll try to look it up and share the workshop schedule because those are really, really good skills to learn. And yeah. Cool. Yay. Well, thank you, Maria.
Yeah, that was really helpful, Maria. Thank you.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
I feel like it's not really like not common for labs usually to just like break down the lit review process because some people will say it's like somewhat intuitive. So you'll do the whole thing and then learn along the way all the mistakes you made. And I guess breaking it down at this point will just help whoever is really trying to do a lit review be more organized, which is the highlight of Marie's presentation. Be more organized about the way you're doing it so you don't have to have all these issues when you are returning to the work when you're writing things up, because it can often be a long time later when you are first looking into something and then when you return to actually cite that thing in a paper. So yeah. Cool. All right. Well, I know it's already 2:50, so we only have like 10 minutes left, but I think next week we're just going to have a goodbye party for Danielle, sadly. And then in the coming weeks, we'll have a little bit more training with research stuff like this, as well as like professional development, as I've talked about. And yeah. I know some of you aren't able to make every single meeting, and that's totally fine. But I really do appreciate everybody that is coming today and who can come for the rest of the quarter and stuff, because I think it's a really great time for us to like learn new skills. Despite maybe if you already know some of these things, it's just a good review. But yeah, that's all I have to say for today. Yeah, I think we should call it. Thank you, everybody.
See you all next week.
Yes, I hope you all have a great weekend, and I will see you all next week. All right, bye.